Hello, my loves. It's Danielle Mercurio, and welcome to the Danielle Mercurio Show. I took yet another little bit of a hiatus, and let me tell you, it was necessary. Not because I wanted it to be, right? There was definitely moments where I was beating myself up or hard on myself to be like, you should get the podcast going. You should be doing this. You said you would be back, and blah, 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 right? And here's the thing. This show, what I offer, how I manage my time, all needed to be redirected. And when you create space, whether it be in your personal life or your professional one, it takes time. It takes time to instill boundaries. It takes time to establish how you want to spend your time. And what this year has really shown me is where I had too much on my plate, where I was constantly burning out from doing too much. And my real, uh, breakthroughs, especially with this past eclipse season, have been around how do I manage my time in a way that feels really good to me and allows me to deliver what it is that I want instead of always feeling like I'm behind or I'm not showing up in a way that feels transparent, if that's the right word, which it doesn't feel like it's the right word, but authentic. That's the word, which is transparent. You know what I mean. Anyway, let's just get into this episode because this episode is about my relationship with food. And, we've talked about it here and there on the show over the years. And I really wanted to showcase where diet culture and that initiation into becoming an adult and learning that food was the enemy really held me back for a very, very long time. And to share a little bit around what the pivot was and what changed and how I started to grow a stronger relationship with food. And if you're here for it, I'm here for it. So let's do the thing.
Danielle Mercurio. It's time for the show with Danielle. Welcome to the show. Danielle Mercurio. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
I missed that theme song. It's a juicy one, isn't it? And Marissa, you'd be quite pleased if you're listening. I got a new microphone. It's an Audio Technica, and I'm here for it. I like it. It's I don't know. It's got a different jive than the Yeti mic I used before. So let's talk a little bit around food, dieting, our bodies. Recently on Instagram stories, I was sharing very briefly around how when I was 12, when I was entering puberty, that was the time that I was brought into the world of Weight Watchers. And I learned about points and calories and what food is good for you, what food is bad for you. If you ate this way, you were considered to be good. If you lost this weight, it was considered to be an accomplishment. And yet, if you did the reverse, if you had the thing that was bad, if you gained weight, if you couldn't control your impulses, then there was something wrong with you. And that was a reflection of your character. It was a reflection of your intelligence. It was a reflection of the way that you showed up in the world. And I believed that for a very, 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 very long time. And I feel like it was a immense disservice to my life, to my upbringing, to my adulthood, to the way that I could show up. And I really want to unpack that a little bit if you can relate at all. So as I mentioned, when I was 12 is when I was entered into Weight Watchers. And, I wouldn't really consider myself to be overweight at that time. I grew up as just kind of your average thin kid who pretty much, from what I can remember, like, could eat what I wanted. I mean, I always knew that you weren't allowed to eat too much, right? Like, there was always limits. Like, you can have one cookie or you can have two slices of pizza or, like there were limits per se, but there wasn't restrictions, right? And there was a difference between being limited by what you can eat and being told you need to eat your dinner before you can have dessert, right? And I'm not saying these rules are right either, but that was kind of the household I grew up in. And I'm the oldest of four. My parents they were kind of always average weight. And then when I turned 12 and I started to hit puberty, I did start to gain weight. I got curvy. And I think that was just my body literally getting curvy, developing, getting breasts, right? There were so many things that were happening, getting my cycle, becoming bloated, all things that were very new to my body. And instead of embracing that process and letting my my female form take shape in the way that she wanted to and adjust to all of the different things that were happening inside of my body, the emphasis was put on food and what I was doing wrong. And part of that was also correlated to the fact that my mom at the time had just given birth to her fourth child. And after she had my sister, developed a thyroid problem. And my mom, who had always been a size 4, size 6 her whole life, all of a sudden doubled in size. And I think it was kind of the perfect storm, if you will, that as my mom gained weight and for the first time really experienced what it was or what it meant to be quote unquote overweight, was the same time that I was entering puberty and starting to um, develop in my own body. And so I think it was a catalyst that as she sought out help for her weight management, it just made sense to include Danielle. And I was always a very, well, I, I was like secretly a class clown, but also very obedient and very like, okay, if this is what you want me to do, I'll do it. And I remember first learning about Weight Watchers and how food had points. Not once was I taught around food that nourished you, or like, when you eat an apple, it has these antioxidants, or when you have blueberries, it helps with this, or these vegetables help fight cancer, or, these certain proteins will help grow your hair and your nails. Like, not once did I ever learn about nutrition as it related to physical health, as it related to well being, as it related to nourishment, as it related to my changing body and what may be good for her. Not once did I learn about what do you want to eat, Danielle? What are you in the mood for? Because likely whatever I was in the mood for wasn't allowed or wasn't okay. And so I found myself in this dynamic where I constantly craved processed food, sweets, carbs, anything that was outside of what the parameters of Weight Watchers were. And yeah, with Weight Watchers, the concept is basically that you get a certain amount of points a day. I think like 30 points, maybe. It's been a very long time. And with as long as you could meet those points, you were good. So like if you knew you were going to go out to dinner, or you knew you were going to have ice cream, or you knew you were going to have a cookie, you would eat certain things that had lower points so that you could have things with bigger points. And I get where they were trying to maybe create moderation. But again, if you don't really learn how to intuitively eat, if you don't understand what your body likes and doesn't like, it doesn't matter if you're kind of teaching moderation. You're almost teaching like how to cheat and like, oh, if you're really good and you just eat, this banana, or you just eat these salads, then you get the prize and you get to have pasta, or you get to have bread, or you get to have whatever it is. And I don't know, I don't think that's a way to eat. I don't think that's a way to go through life. And I always felt kind of weird about it, but I didn't know any better. I didn't know any different. All I knew was that if I was good if I ate a certain way, I was bad if I didn't. And I did my best to like keep the points, and I was able to keep my weight in check. But like I hated the fact that I felt like I was constantly being watched. So I always felt like my mom was watching me when it came to food. She'd be watching me at the dinner table. She'd be watching me if we went out to eat. And I hated it. I hated the look on her face if I did reach for a second helping, or if I did have a dessert when we were at a family function. I hated her eyes on me. I could feel it. I could feel the judgment. I could feel like something was wrong with me, because it made me believe at that age that the only way you could really get ahead in life, the only way that you could really value who you were, the only way that you would be accepted and loved was to be thin, was to have a certain body type that was considered acceptable. And if you were overweight, you were unacceptable. If you couldn't eat properly, then there was something that was wrong with your intelligence. There was something that was wrong with your ability to have any kind of control. So I felt like I was impulsive, like I was lazy, and like I was a failure. And I would envy my skinny friends, the individuals with the high metabolism that could eat whatever they wanted. I was so jealous of them. It's like, how come they can eat whatever they want and it's okay, and I'm not allowed? I hated it. And in that, I started to develop a secret fetish for food because I was constantly restricted, because I was constantly being told what to eat, because I was constantly micromanaging and keeping journals and logging my points and being weighed every 3 days. I had no control over my digestion. I had no control with what I was putting in my body. And I had no control of even having a sense of enjoying food. It's hard to enjoy food when it's being monitored, when it's being watched, when you're like setting a timer to have something. And I recognized that this control around what I was putting in my body then later continued on in life in other ways. I felt like I had no control when it came to relationships or the men that I would date. I'd be more sexually ambitious because I didn't really have control. I didn't have the ability to understand what I did want and what I didn't want. When it came to finding a career, when it came to finding a job, when it came to making any decisions, I lost my ability to even think for myself. And I stem that to the diet culture. I stem that from being told you have to eat in a certain way. It is restricted and we are going to tell you what to do. And then I started to put that process on everything else in my life. And I became more and more lost. But within that context of food and diet culture, and the diet literally being like DI, DIE, die, right? Like die would, let's just add a T at the end. You are literally killing any pleasure, any intention, any God-given ability to have the food that you're meant to have. I mean, the earth is here to provide for us, not hurt us, not punish us. But the food that was really punishing us were all the chemical induced ones. All of the, there were so many trends like fat free, sugar free, low carb, like no crust, multigrain, like lean cuisine. Oh my God, those fucking lean cuisine, the slim fast. Oh my gosh, who here was on the slim fast train, right? So many crazy things that weren't even real. They were a construct to keep you in this like little container. This is safe, but it's not safe. It's probably not safe to eat those bars all the time and eat like weird wafers or that stuff was just like nuts that we would like go towards. And so in the process, I started to develop a history with binging. I also developed body dysmorphia. Of course, body dysmorphia is when you are not able to accept your body as your own. So when I would look in the mirror, I couldn't relate to the body I was seeing. I couldn't make sense of it. Even when I was touching my body and looking in the mirror, it didn't feel real. It felt deformed. It felt like an illusion. And that's because I was in an illusion with food. I was in an illusion with dieting. I was in an illusion of society dictates what your body should look like. And if I'm at the mercy of society, I have no control of my own self, and I have no inkling or understanding of what it is that I am even meant to look like. My relationship with my body is gone. When you sign up for a diet, when you sign up for a program that's really big, like a Weight Watchers or, what was that one song? It was like 1-800-94-JENNY. What was that? Jenny Craig, right? Jenny Craig. You are saying, I am not my body. Here, you tell me how my body should be. You would see those ads and you see people with the big pants and they're like, wearing their big pants and now they're super thin. And it's like, that's an accomplishment. That means acceptance. And then as soon as you gain the weight back, you're a failure. You're not accepted anymore. It was like you got invited to a club and then you got kicked out. We'll talk more about that later. I'm actually going to do this in 2 parts. Part 2 is what happens when you get kicked out of the club that you were temporarily invited to because you couldn't, quote unquote, maintain what you got to. So the body dysmorphia was one piece. And then the other piece was the binging. Because I felt so restricted, because I couldn't have what I want, because I'd always be told no. And then I'd see like my brother is a good example. My brother, he has a very high metabolism to this day. I mean, this kid is like bones. He can eat anything and doesn't gain weight, which I know he struggles with in his own way, right? Because as a man, being super skinny and bony isn't actually considered to be a quote unquote desirable uh, way to show up as a quote unquote man, right? But we can unpack that as well. But I used to always see like he get to eat, all the shit and I couldn't. So I started learning that I could hide food and eat it at certain times. So I would, what I would do is I would do it slowly. Like I would literally like pull like a few Doritos and then I would do it again. And then I would do it again until I amassed like a little pile. And then I'd hide them I'd hide food in my desk drawer. And when I would be quote unquote doing my homework, I would be binging on the Doritos. I love the frozen soft pretzels. I would like eat like two or three of them at a time. I'd tell my mom that I was going for a walk. Instead of going for a walk, I would literally go sit in the woods and eat the food I took and that I stole. I would ride my bike to like the CVS or like we used to have this kind of like our version of Wawa or Sheets, and I would buy snacks and I would just go eat them. And then I started gaining a lot of weight. So not it's interesting because I was quote unquote my mom was nervous that I was gaining weight at puberty, even though I was really I probably gained, I would say at that time, maybe 10 pounds when I entered puberty. But like, that makes sense that I gained 10 pounds. My body was changing and shifting and reacclimating. And so that makes sense. So I gained what I consider to be probably a likely natural 10 pounds at the onset of puberty. By the time I was 14, I was 30 pounds overweight. Okay. I do not believe that would have happened if we had just embraced the process. And I started to learn about intuitive eating and I started to understand what food's role was. And no, this is not me also condoning like, you should eat whatever you want and fuck the system and just eat processed foods all day. This is about understanding and learning how to have a unique and beautiful dynamic with food, which again, we'll get into, but I didn't have that. And many people didn't have that. I don't know many friends or peers or anyone I've talked to that's just like, yeah, my mom, or my parents just taught me that food is your friend and here's how to intuitively eat, It didn't happen. And so I was gaining weight. My mom was really confused because I was quote unquote logging in my points. I would eat really well in front of her and then I would binge in secret. I loved when I had babysitting jobs because, they'd be like, eat whatever you want. And literally the kids would go to bed and then I would go to the pantry. I would go to the fridge. I would go to the freezer and I'd binge because it was my opportunity to. And I always felt so shameful when I was doing it, but I just felt like I had no choice. I felt like I had no control. I felt so impulsive. I felt at the mercy. I felt so like something was taken away from me. And so when I would have the opportunity to binge, it was my way to reclaim it and say, I can have this and I can have as much as I want of it. I'll eat this sleeve of Oreos because I'm not allowed to have Oreos. Or I'll eat this bag of chips because I'm not allowed to have chips. Or even like little things like granola. Like I couldn't even have granola. And I'd like binge on granola. Like now I'm like, oh my God, granola is like amazing and beautiful. And I love it. But it really messed me up. And then something clicked my junior year of high school and somehow I lost the 30 pounds. Like I want to say my freshman and sophomore years of high school, I was on the side of the 20 to 30 pound weight gain. And then junior year, I lost it. And, I got so much praise from my family. I think, what I was doing, I was swimming more, which beautiful, great exercise. Yes. I was swimming more. Oh my God, I was addicted to Diet Coke. I remember doing a lot of that, but, and I don't know, something clicked in my head where I just started eating really lean. I also started antidepressants. Maybe that was connected. Who knows? But I know that I lost my first like significant 30 pounds my junior year. I remember my mom would take me shopping and I could buy whatever I wanted at the store. And And people at school started saying like, wow, Danielle's like such a good dresser. And then my family would praise me. And, guys started giving me attention and I really liked it. I liked it. But at the same, I liked it so much that I was willing to stay in the diet culture. I was willing not to binge for a little while too. But because I was so scared of gaining weight and being told the failure, not being praised, not being told I'm a good dresser, not being accepted. And so it was a really hard position to be in. And I still didn't even know at the end of the day if you were like, Danielle, what do you like to eat? I mean, I loved like Chinese food, but again, Chinese food was bad. So food that I loved was also bad. And that's not cool. It's not cool to have a relationship with something that you love that's bad. It doesn't, you know what I mean? So as opposed to just being like, yeah, she loves Chinese food. I still love Chinese food. I probably have it once every 3 months, but I love it. I just know that like it doesn't really sit well in my body as much, but I love it in the moment and it's so good and I enjoy it so much. And then I'm like, good, I'm content. And then like in a couple months, I crave it again and then I eat it. But it's taken a long time for me to get there. Oh my God, I used to go to the, like, so then once I got a car, that was a game changer too. Um, and I know I'm kind of unloading a lot, but these are just, stories that you may identify with if you've had this history and you were, taught that food was the enemy and food was kind of the gateway of being accepted or not being accepted and being valued or not being valued. And so once I got a car, then that opened up. That's when I started gaining weight again because I realized, oh, I can drive my car and I can go to this Chinese buffet. I can go to the McDonald's drive-thru. I have more freedom to eat what it is that I want. Didn't mean I felt good or felt better. It just gave me more access to food that I could eat in secret. The thing is, if you were around me in public, if you met me or I was at a family thing or whatever, like it looked like I was eating normally. And then it was always behind the scenes that I would, you know, go to town on whatever I wasn't allowed to have. And that continued through my senior year. And then I feel like I was able to manage it. Like, again, it yo-yos, right? And you go through phases where you kind of get in the groove and you're kind of in the diet and you're like right where they want you to be and you lose the weight. And then once you slowly start to try to kind of have that moderation and get like it's easier to lose weight and be in the depths of the diet because when you're in the diet you can do it. But then once the diet is done and you've lost the weight and there's no more weight to be lost, unless you want to go down that rabbit hole, which I never did, you're kind of screwed. At least that's how I felt because I didn't understand how to maintain it. Because again, I still didn't even understand how to maintain my life. I didn't really even know what I was doing with my life. I wanted to be a psych major. I was told to be an elementary ed major. I still had the body dysmorphia. I was so afraid of fucking it up. I was so afraid of gaining the weight that that's what I did. I self-sabotaged and I created a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then by the time I was 20 years old or 19 or 20 years old, I was almost 200 pounds because it had gotten so out of hand. And what's interesting is, and I've talked about this dynamic before, I had a friendship that lasted 15 years. We broke up 2 years ago. And when I met her, in some ways it was really beautiful because she was all about honoring the female body and eating whatever you wanted and embracing your curves and being confident in who you are no matter what. And I loved that. I was like, whoa. I was like, she is giving me permission to just be myself. She's not telling me I need to be on a diet. When we go out to eat, we're not saying, oh, this is so bad, or I got to go to the gym, or I shouldn't be eating this, right? Which sometimes we do with our girlfriends. How many of you have had that experience where you're out to eat and it's like, oh, I really want the nachos, but I shouldn't. Like she'd be the one to be like, no, you should. Like have the nachos, have dessert. And in some ways that was really amazing until it got to the point where I realized and I recognized I was letting her give me permission to binge. And I started to talk to her about it. I was like, I love the way that you have helped me appreciate my curves and feel beautiful at any size. But sometimes I do eat too much. And I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think I should be having a whole pint of ice cream in one sitting. I don't think I should always be eating junk food or fries or but you always encourage it. And she's like, yeah, I just want you to eat what you want. And I was like, yes, but I'm really trying to find a way where I could be healthy. I didn't really know what that meant, but I would always share that with her. I'd be like, I embrace I'm learning to embrace my body, but I don't want to continue this binging because that doesn't feel good to me. And sometimes when I'm with you, it's easy to binge. And she never listened when it came to that. She was always encouraging me to binge. She was always the one to hand me a spoon. She was always the one to tell me to have another helping. And that wasn't good either. So I went from one extreme to the other. I went to one extreme with my mom, was always on top of my weight, always watching me, always giving me that, like, I remember when I would come home from college, that look that she would give when I would walk in the room and like size me up and down to see like what my weight looked like and what my body reflected. And it's painful and it's horrible to witness that from someone you love and you're trying to get validation and approval from. And so to fear eating around her, to then have a relationship with someone that was always encouraging you to eat. So I was really like kind of on both ends of the spectrum. And it was interesting. There was a year in college where this friend, she went to study abroad. And when she went to study abroad, it was different. It was interesting for me because I didn't have that dynamic because, she was away and I really did want to go visit her. And my parents said, hey, we'll pay. And this was, it was far. It was in Australia. And they're like, we'll pay for your plane ticket if you lose 20 pounds. And I really wanted to go. I couldn't afford a plane ticket to Australia. So I lost the 20 pounds. And then what was crazy was I lost 20 pounds. People were praising me. And then I went to visit her and she was like, what the fuck did you do? She was like, you're so skinny, your bones. And I wasn't. I was probably 160 pounds, I want to say. Maybe 160. I think I was 100. I think I was 185. I remember now. I was 185. My parents said, you need to lose the 20 pounds. So I was 165, around 5'8". I was thinner, 100%. And I definitely consider that to be a better zone for me. And she was like, your skin and bones. She was like, you're so tiny. And I binged that entire trip, you know? And so anyway, I don't want to get too dragged out with some of these stories, but this is just to kind of give you a little perspective into what food looked like for me, what dieting, was. I mean, I tried so many different diets. Weight Watchers seemed to be the one I always went back to. Again, Slim Fast was a big one I did. Trying no sugar, low carb, low fat, just over exercising. That was something I started to learn to do. Like, if I exercise a lot, I could eat more. It was kind of like a form of bulimia. And I was just fascinated with diet culture, and I always, celebrity diets, always stalking them. So anyway, this continued until, I'm 36 now. This continued until around age 25 of this back and forth dieting, feeling like a failure, body dysmorphia, always feeling unaccepted because I was heavier, always feeling like, oh, there's Danielle, like she's a beautiful girl. I just wish she would lose weight. She has a beautiful smile. It's too bad she can't get her body together. That's what I would hear all the time. When a guy didn't like me back, I would always be like, it's because I'm fat. It's because I'm overweight. It's because I don't have a relationship with my body. It's because I can't control myself around food. And so then, it just heightened and escalated. And when I worked in a restaurant, I did it more, and it just grew and grew and grew until I was 25 and I wound up with a overinflamed gallbladder. And because of that, I wound up losing, over the span of 6 months, I went from being almost, I think I was around 190 pounds to 135 pounds. And I had never been that low. Like, even when I was at my lowest with weight fluctuations, I probably would get to maybe 150, 155. I never, and even now, like to this day, I'd say, like, I think if I were to get on a scale right now, I'd be like 150. And again, I just say this for context because, again, when it comes to food and your body, and I remember there's like, there'd be all these indexes and indicators. If you're this height, you should weigh this much. That's not true, right? We all have to find what our happy weight is, where our body likes to be. And I know that my body likes to be at around 150, 155. That's where it likes to be. That's where it seems to go when I'm really in my, flow, and I'm feeling comfortable with my life and my body, and I'm just eating intuitively, and I'm not over obsessing. That's where my body will just go. So, and I share that to say that when I dropped to 135, that was frail for me. That was not a healthy weight. But because my gallbladder was so bad, and they didn't know that at first, they thought it was acid reflux. They thought I used to, again, drink a lot of diet soda. I used to take Advil a lot because my antidepressants would give me headaches. Man, fun stuff. And so they thought maybe the Advil was eating at my stomach lining. There was all these theories, but that to the side, it was a real big shock for me to be in a place in my life where I was quote unquote thin, and I was getting more male attention. I found that more people wanted to hang out with me. I found that shopping was fun. I it was confusing because it's almost like you spend your whole life dieting and trying to be an acceptable weight, and then you get there and you don't know who the fuck you are and what you want. And it's really troublesome and it's really confusing. And so what did I do? I didn't binge eat anymore because I couldn't, because my body was like rejecting food. I started finding ways to drink. And that's what led to my over excessive drinking. I could drink dirty martinis, and that didn't upset my stomach. And so I would get drunk because it was the only way I knew how to cope with having a thinner body. Crazy, right? So I went from binge eating to finally getting to the acceptable weight. But the only reason why I got the acceptable weight wasn't because I was dieting, wasn't because I learned how to manage my relationship with my body, because I healed my body dysmorphia, because I started to learn how to just eat real food. No, it was because and it needed to. My body was like, Danielle, like, your digestion has been fucked for almost 15 years. We're shutting down on you. And the overinflamed gallbladder was a wake-up call to learn how to manage my digestion, but I wasn't emotionally mature enough to understand that. Thus, it led to drinking. And then through the drinking, and then finally getting my gallbladder out, and then that led to more drinking, and then that led to slowly, with my gallbladder being out, starting to bring in food again and start binging again. And slowly the weight started creeping up. And the weight didn't creep up. I'd say the weight started to get back to like that 155, 160 range. And then that was the height of my issues with alcohol. And then that's when I went into rehab for alcohol. And while I was in rehab for alcohol, I was definitely binge eating again. But it was interesting. It was the first time in my life where I was okay with binge eating, and I wasn't mad at myself, because I was like, you're healing your relationship with alcohol. You're getting help. You're working with a therapist. You're in group coaching. You're starting to meditate. If the quote unquote worst thing you're doing right now is eating a ton of ice cream, that's okay. And it was the first time I really was gentle with myself. And it was the first time I let myself off the hook for craving food, for wanting something. And here was the crazy thing. As soon as I started to give myself permission to binge eat and said, no big deal, you can have the ice cream. No biggie. Danielle, you want a burger and fries? Just have it. I stopped craving it. I stopped reaching for those things. All of a sudden, I still remember this day, I remember being excited to buy fruit because I wanted to buy fruit. I wasn't buying fruit because it was healthy. I was buying fruit because I actually wanted it. I was like, ooh, blueberries are in season. That sounds great. And I remember having a moment like, who the fuck am I right now? Being excited that blueberries are in season? What? Being excited that, I remember every morning I would, on my way to work, I'd eat an apple, and I like loved it. And it was the weirdest thing, but I really believe it was that moment of me having some compassion to myself during a really dark time and giving myself permission to have whatever I wanted, then all of a sudden created this shift where it started to offset the binging. And not to say that it didn't happen, but it was happening a lot less frequently. And again, I started to care about what I was putting in my body. I started to actually not look at calories, but I would look at, like, because that would be my habit. I would reach for something and I'd immediately go to how many calories, how many grams of fat. I noticed I started going to the ingredients and being like, are these ingredients that I can understand? Can I read these words? Does it only have a few things in it? I started noticing that I wanted whole foods. I started noticing that I wanted to eat more plants. And it was all because I wanted to work on myself. I still didn't like myself. I still didn't love myself, but I knew that I was in a period in my life where I wanted to get stronger, where I wanted to heal. I wanted to know why I felt so broken, why I was so worried about everyone judging me, why I couldn't accept myself. And in that journey, food started to have a different purpose, started to have a different meaning. It started to have a different role. And I started to understand that food, when I started listening to the voice inside my head, when I started getting excited about certain things like blueberries, I realized that I actually started to feel better. And I recognized that having whole real foods allowed me to become a whole real person. And that's when I started to want to explore more of what that was about. So I knew I didn't want to go on a diet. I knew I didn't want to explore, because I know there's like, holistic nutritionists and different, plant-based journeys you could go on. I was like, no, 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 I'm not there yet. I had just started exploring meditation through the Shambhala lineage, which is a form of Buddhism. And I was really into all their books. And I saw in their library, there was a book called Mindful Eating, Rediscovering a Joyful Relationship with Food. And I was like, oh, this sounds cool. I want to do this mindful eating. And literally I learned the art of intuitive eating, of eating when you're hungry, not dictating, oh, it's breakfast, so you have to eat, or oh, it's lunch, so you have to eat this. Oh, it's dinner, so you have to do this. No, you can't have dessert. No, you can't have a snack. It was like, eat when you're hungry. And it taught you the different relationships with food. It taught me about real hunger versus emotional hunger. It taught me how to taste my food. It taught me how to really be intentional with what I was eating, but not from a space of restriction, not from a space of diet culture, and not from a space of you're doing anything wrong. Everything in that book, from what I remember, and it's been a while since I've read it, was all about reestablishing what food is meant to do for you, what purpose it plays in your life, and how it can make you feel better, how it can make you look better, and how it can make you become more in alignment with how you're meant to walk this path. And food has become this beautiful instrument for me. I almost want to cry because it's like, food was this thing that had so much power over me, and it felt cruel, and it felt destructive and abusive, to all of a sudden becoming something that was delightful and nourishing and a beautiful opportunity, as a way to connect with other people, as a way to just improve my life, improve my focus, improve my well-being, improve the way I look at my body. And while the body dysmorphia still took a little bit to click into, and we'll talk more about that in the part 2, intuitive eating gave me permission to listen to myself, to trust myself, to know that I couldn't fail when it came to food. And it can really be that simple. Now, again, this didn't happen overnight. Okay. It took me a few years to really, really like lean into intuitive eating. And there were definitely moments where I fell. When I moved back to LA, or when I moved to LA, that was a harder period for me because I got a little bit sucked up into that culture of looking a certain way, celebrity culture, influencers, and I noticed I was starting to get hard on myself. And as soon as I get hard on myself, I go right back to binging and I go right back to that restrictive culture as opposed to being in environments where I feel safe, like Philadelphia, for example. I feel really good here. I feel really confident. And so it connects me back to my intuitive eating. I'm more intentional around what I put in my body. I've started to learn more about the properties of food and what it can do for you, learning to eat for the seasons. Things that, again, I would have loved to have learned, like, these are foods that are grown in the summer, therefore you eat them during the summer. In the winter, you need to get more starches and proteins in because the weather is cold and your bones need warmth. Why didn't anybody teach me that? It's like, that's the stuff our body wants. That's the thing that our mind, feeds off of. And, learning to have this new relationship with food, and food is now a tool for me, just like astrology is, just like meditation is, just like going for a walk is. And food has become something that I enjoy. That's something that I can have without restriction. And if I do notice that my weight is fluctuating, or I notice that maybe I was going a little bit overboard on things, I reel it back and I do it in a really gentle way. I don't think there's anything wrong with, cleansing or, kind of going through phases where you experiment with different foods. I think it's fine as long as it's coming from a place of curiosity and compassion and really wanting your body to operate at its best level and doing it in a way that's not hyper focused or psychotic, you know? And so that's kind of what things progressed to for me. And so some things that I would share with you if you're in a space where you want to learn more about intuitive eating. Again, I really recommend this book called Mindful Eating. But I really want you to look at what the relationship food has been in your life. And when did food start to become the enemy? Really, like, sit down and ask yourself, when did food become the enemy? How old was I? Who told me food was wrong? And what did that do for me? What was my dynamic with food ever since? What habits did it create? What restrictions were created because of it? What was my relationship with food, if any? What was it like around other people? And it's uncomfortable to look at that because food is just supposed to be, food is for our survival. And when we're mistreating a tool that, again, like I was just saying how food is a tool for me, like astrology and meditation, technically you don't need astrology and meditation to survive. You don't. I mean, technically I need it to survive. But really, like, you don't need astrology to survive. You don't need meditation. It will help you, but you need food to survive. And so where was your restriction with food restricting your survival? Where was it causing you to relate to the world differently and not feel like you were enough, not feel sexy or supported in your body, to not feel beautiful or nourished or nurtured? Another thing you can start to do is notice your language around food. That was a big one for me. I would be the one to be like, oh, I'm being bad. I'm having cake. Or, oh, I better go to the gym tomorrow because I'm having these fries. And then I would do it with my girlfriends, right? Like, we'd all like go out to eat, and the whole time we would talk about how bad we were or how guilty we felt for eating. And I want you to notice if you're labeling food as good or bad. Okay. Oh, I'm being good. And it goes the other way around too. I'm being good because I'm having a salad. What? What are you talking about? Are you having a salad because your body wants a salad? Instead of I'm being good, you can just say I'm being intuitive. I'm listening to myself. My body said it wants a salad, so I'm going to have it. Right? My body says it wants a piece of cake, so I'm going to have it. Okay. Cool. Let's get good or bad out of the food vocabulary, unless you're like, wow, this is really good. Like, this tastes really good, or this tastes really bad. Right? Like, that's okay. You can describe food taste as good or bad, but food isn't good or bad. It's just food. So noticing your language and noticing how you talk to yourself when you eat certain things. Again, oh, I ate good today. Well, what was so good about it? Was it good because you ate everything that felt intuitively aligned? Or was it because you ate everything that diet culture told you to eat? And then as soon as you don't eat what diet culture tells you to eat, then you're all of a sudden you ate bad. We've got to stop that. We've got to stop this language around how we're treating our relationship with food. And like with my girlfriends, for example, once I started to become more of an intuitive eater and really started to enjoy eating, whether it be the nachos or the salad, if we were at a restaurant and we were ordering stuff, and people were like, "Oh, we're being bad," I'd be like, "Can we just let's just enjoy this because we're gonna eat it anyway. So if we're gonna eat it, let's just really enjoy it and let's not call ourselves bad for having it." Or like eventually with some of my friends, it got to the point where I was like, hey, like I just want to be open and let you know that I don't like talking negative about food. And so when we go out to dinner together, I prefer it if we didn't talk negative. And I'm telling you, none of my friends talk shit about food around me. And of course, my friendships have shifted over the years, but I remember specifically during that time 10 years ago when I really started to explore intuitive eating, they stopped. They listened. And I would like to think that it maybe helped them too, you know? So that's a piece of it. Taking your time when you eat. Okay. I admit I love eating and watching TV. I just do. Like, that feeling like when you prepare something and then you sit down and there's a commercial and you're like, oh, I can't start eating yet until the show actually starts. Or I can't start eating until I like hit play on Netflix and the movie officially begins, right? I'm totally that person. I love it. But I accept that. There's nothing wrong with me eating and watching TV. But I also like to make time to eat in silence or to eat while I'm listening to music because it reminds me to eat and connect with my plate and connect with the food that I'm putting in my mouth, to really taste the flavors, to really feel the textures in my mouth, to swallow and feel the journey of it moving down my body. And it might sound a little silly, but by taking that time, you're really allowing yourself to connect with food in a different way than just this is good or bad. This is what I'm supposed to eat. This is what I can't eat. Oh, I better hurry up and eat this, right? How many oh my God, I can tell you how many times I shoved food in my face before someone could catch me. What? That's not how you eat. So giving yourself time, like maybe there's a period within your day where you can eat for 5 minutes alone and just create your meal experience just like you would sitting down for a meditation. And you just sit and you focus on the food. Because what you're going to find is you're going to actually start to learn and redefine your palate with what you do and what you don't like by doing that. You're going to start to notice, oh, I really love how I feel when I really sit and eat this avocado toast, or this pasta salad that I made, or whatever it may be. Or you know what, I actually don't like when I eat this, or I actually realize I don't need to eat as much as I thought I did. You find that you get full a lot faster when you're not preoccupied. If you're scrolling on your phone, if you're watching TV, it's a lot easier to eat more. And again, maybe you needed to eat that much, but maybe you didn't. And that's for you to decide. Again, when it comes to portion control, you get to be in control, not someone else. Again, if someone says, oh, you're only allowed to eat this much, what do? You're like, fuck that. I want to eat more. I want a second helping. But if someone says, like, eat whatever you want, yeah, in the beginning you might binge, but eventually you're like, you know what, actually, this is all I need. I'm good. That power is lifted, and you're able to decide what portions work for you and what makes sense. I've found I'm actually more of a grazer than I am a big meal person. I don't like eating large meals because I actually don't feel very good, and it makes me tired, and it creates some more digestive problems for me. I still am dealing with digestive issues because of the abuse I put on my body for 15 years. I'm still dealing with it 10 years later. And so because of that, I have to be more of a grazer, and I have to eat, multiple small meals as opposed to bigger ones. And it's okay. But I learned that through intuitive eating. I learned that I like having these bite-sized portions, and I wind up eating 5 to 6 times a day instead of 3 times a day. And that works for me. Another thing is just, again, developing compassion for yourself, for the way that you approach food, recognizing anything from the past that you might have learned or picked up along the way that you don't agree with. It's okay to say goodbye to that. It's okay if you don't want to agree with Weight Watchers anymore, just because you did Weight Watchers. It's okay if you don't identify with having a sugar-free diet because someone told you should. It's okay if you feel really comfortable at a certain size, even if other people don't feel comfortable with that. Okay? Like, bringing in that sense of compassion, bringing in an attitude that feels more fair. if we're looking at it from the space of our higher self, if your higher self was to come in and talk with you around eating and what it would like from you, what do you think it would say? What would your higher self tell you around the way that you eat and what you put in your body? Something to think about. Okay. It also is an opportunity to redefine, like I was saying, like you kind of start to change your palate and you start to learn what you really like, what you're actually hungry for, what you're not hungry for. I used to deny myself avocados, and I fucking love avocados because I was told they were too fatty. Banana was another one too. Banana was a weird one because some places would be like, have the bananas. Other people would be like, don't have the banana. And I'd be like, I love bananas. And I'd be so confused when I was eating a banana if it was good or not, if I was allowed to or not. Same with avocados. I was told, oh, they're really fatty. And I don't fucking care. I don't care. Or eggs. I love eggs. And I'd be told you're only allowed to have one egg or you're only allowed to have egg whites. I'm like, no, I want the fucking yolk because I like it, And it's like you learn and you try things out and you get into a groove, and then your body hits that happy weight that I was telling you about, where your body just kind of falls into the spot when you're treating it well from the space of what you're ingesting because you want to eat it, moving your body, and talking to it with kindness. And I really believe that it's that trilogy or trinity of being mindful of what food you're eating because you want to eat it, moving your body, and talking kindly to yourself will allow you to get to that weight that feels good to you. And then if that weight starts to go down or go up, then it's a moment to kind of sit back and observe. And I know for me, it's like if it goes down, then I need to look at what's going on and why that's happening. Usually it's because I'm burning myself out. And then if it goes up, what's going on? And it's usually because I'm feeling out of body or I'm letting someone else have power over me. And so I'm binging as a result. Okay. And so those are some things to kind of move through. So I hope that you find this beneficial. I'm going to do part 2 around how I was able to then heal my body dysmorphia, which came a lot later. So like first came the relationship with food and healing the binge eating. And then once I was able to do that, once I was able to learn my happy weight, I then had to learn how to heal my body dysmorphia, especially with being in an industry where you have a public platform and what that's been like, having myself and my face and my body in the spotlight, and how I had to learn how to heal my body dysmorphia with that. So I really hope that this is beneficial. If you can relate, please let me know. Message me. You can find me on Instagram. My email is Danielle@DanielleMercurio.com. Reach out to me. I want us to continue to have these conversations. I'm all about opening up into a path of wellness and spirituality. And in order to do that, we have to get real with all the rules and the cultures that have been restrictive and limiting and not defining us in a way that allows us to expand and grow. So if you are feeling this, I'm feeling you, and I love you and I appreciate you and I think you're amazing. So thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for part 2.